Welcome, Simon, all the way from the USA on the Real Antiques podcast. This episode is a little bit different to the norm, I suppose, that we have. Basically, because Simon is all the way out in the Australia, the USA, not USA, Australia. So, get this totally wrong. Sorry, I had someone on from the USA in the week, Simon. So we're still getting to grips with this podcasting. Yeah, so all the way out in Australia, and he does something absolutely incredible in the restoration world, in the natural history world. Simon, just take it away and just tell the guests, please.
Edward, thank you for having me on your show. It's always an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Yes, actually, I'm in Australia, which is a long way away from Europe. I got into the cleaning and restoration and preparation of shark jaws originally back in the, it's going to tell my age now, in the late 1970s. Where it was all the rage, after Jaws, everyone sort of wanted to go out and catch sharks and, have Jaws, shown off, etc. And then over the years, people started to understand a lot more about sharks and appreciated their role in the ecosystem, in the ocean, etc. So the fishing, well, the game fishing anyhow, what they call recreational fishing, kind of changed a bit, and they went on to tag and release. So although sharks are still caught, obviously, I then changed from doing just the jaws to now going into cleaning the skeletons and the skulls of these animals for educational purposes, for fisheries, for museums, for research institutes. And I guess the difficulty with dealing with these animals is the fact that they're all totally cartilage. They're all cartilage. There's no bone whatsoever in these animals. So it's a whole new process that you have to go through as compared to if you were articulating, say, for example, a normal fish with bones. So I've been doing it now for the past 40 years.
And you basically taught yourself this, Simon, as well, didn't you? There was just by reading.
I did.
Books.
Look, it's one of those things whereby there are no manuals. It's one of those things where you experimenting every single day. You're trying different things. You're trying different solutions. And although you think that you've got it down pat, you do a skull or you do a skeleton, and then you realize in actual fact it's either melted or it's broken or whatever. So I think it's Mother Nature's way of keeping you honest, let's say.
Yeah, it's a trial and error as well, and also they're such amazing pieces. I mean, these are going to be statement pieces in anybody's collection if you're a collector of natural history or home museum or anything like that. So you're sort of, every time you're doing one, you've really got to take your time and get it right, haven't you?
Well, that's right. I mean, look, in a way, I guess my philosophy has always been the fact that, whether we like it or not, these animals, some species of sharks, of course, are protected, in which case you can't fish for them. But others, the majority of them are still fished commercially, etc. So I guess my philosophy is that if they are going to be fished and rather than sort of be wasted, I tend to sort of give them, let's call it dignity in death. And make sure that they are prepared in such a way whereby people look at them and they're absolutely mesmerized by them. A lot of people, for example, have never seen a hammerhead.
Wow.
So this is a hammerhead skull. So the whole structure of this animal is just absolutely phenomenal. You look at them and you just wonder, it looks like an alien.
Yeah, and it's weird because
incredible.
the eyes with that are on both ends, aren't they? And it's sort of like the lateral line and I can't remember what it's called, but they use that to hunt. That's incredible. And you really get to see that through the skull, don't you?
You do. So, here you have the eyes, for example. Here you have the nostrils in this area here. And so the whole shark is basically, as it swims, it's smelling from both nostrils, and it's actually then able to detect where the smell is actually coming from, whether it's a fish or whatever it is. And then, as you rightly said, so along the ventral section, along the flank, it's got this lateral line that detects any electrical impulses.
Yeah,
And
sort of knows it.
the thing about these hammerheads is the fact that their their favorite food are stingrays, which are actually underneath the sand. So you can't actually see them. They tend to bury themselves. And so the hammerheads are able, with electrical impulses, to be able to detect where they are. And that's their favorite food. So they end up sort of feeding on the stingrays. But that's just this is a great hammerhead. It's actually it's a mediocre hammerhead because it's actually a small one. The great hammerheads grow huge. You know, they sometimes the hammers are up to about 70, 80, 90 centimeters, nearly a meter in length, which are incredible. So, you know, you've got something like this, which is a totally different configuration, let's say, of a shark as we know it. So,
yeah, I mean,
you know, that's
that
that one.
and that looks just amazing, doesn't it? It looks so unique and different, as well as even sculptural as well. Probably more sculptural than the other pieces, that hammerhead one, doesn't it? What else have you got, Simon?
You're absolutely right.
I can see some bigger.
That's it.
I can
So
see
then,
some
of course,
bigger ones
you go to
behind.
the other end. You go to the bad boy. This is the bull shark.
Wow.
So again, you can see the difference in the shape of the skull itself. So obviously, these sharks probably people sort of talk about the white shark and they talk about the tiger shark, etc. But in actual fact, I actually believe that these sharks are probably the most dangerous ones, probably even more than a white shark. The white shark's got the size.
Yeah, and these are the ones that can swim slightly up inland as well. Sort of, they can go into fresh water
Correct.
a little bit. So you tend to get them a little bit more inland where people are swimming more as well. And I mean, and you look
That's
at
right,
that,
exactly.
it's quite scary, to be honest with you, isn't it?
And you know, if you look at the skull area here, and this is just absolutely solid. Wow. So again, here, this part here, you can see these are the nostrils, these are the eyes. They've actually got quite small eyes, which is actually quite interesting. And even though they are in water, which is sometimes can be a bit murky, obviously the smell, the sense of smell is obviously the one that is actually plays the biggest role as far as them hunting food. And these teeth are just incredible. They're just this is a solid shark. It's a dangerous shark. And so, you know, it's one of those things whereby you don't want to deal with with any bull sharks. This is it's probably not as exciting, but this is actually a white shark jaw, and you know, you look at it and you go, "Hang on, where are the teeth?" So I've had a lot of people and a lot of research institutes who now, I mean, obviously the white sharks have been protected pretty much throughout the world since about 1999, 2000. So a lot of the research institutes and museums are now looking at getting replica jaws. So what I'm doing with this, for example, is I removed all the teeth, and each tooth is cast with a special epoxy enamel, etc. And then the jaw is cast as well. So these become resin jaws that have got actually reproduction teeth in them. And so what happens is that a lot of the museums prefer to have these sorts of jaws, which are reproductions, rather than the real piece. Obviously, because these jaws, you know, the real ones are worth tens of thousands of dollars, obviously, because they're in old collections and they're not available anymore, etc. So there is a want to sort of have something which is a reproduction, but it still looks pretty amazing.
And that's a great thing as well, because educationally you're getting the exact size to look at as well and go, wow, that is an incredibly big shark. And then also it's you can obviously import and export those ones, can't you, the reproduction ones, with ease, you know, because you're one of the only people that is got a certificate as well, haven't you, for real shark jaws, so you can basically get them out worldwide.
Correct. I have a license with New South Wales Fisheries, which is the government department here in New South Wales, in the state that I live in. And basically, what it is actually I can not only work with these endangered species, for example, like white sharks and grey nurses, but I also have the permit to actually possess them. So what happens is I can actually get old jaws from old collections, and I can work on them and restore them, etc. A lot of the work comes from government departments. A lot of the work comes from research institutes and museums who send me these animals, which are obviously totally protected, but having that license means that I can actually work on them. And in fact, I'm doing quite a bit of work for the fisheries department, preparing skeletons for them, again for their research and education purposes. So they have like a van that goes around the coastline. And they have a variety of skulls and skeletons, etc. And people can educate. They can be educated as far as the role of sharks in the ocean. And seeing them visually is a lot better than seeing them on a computer or a laptop or or an iPad. And that's the thing that we were sort of trying and get people to understand the importance of these animals. But they have to see them visually, especially kids. I mean, kids love this sort of stuff.
Yeah, they do. They can stick their head in there and everything and be like, "Wow, can't
oh God, no, they always do that. They always put their heads through."
And you work incredibly hard because last night you sent me a voice note saying, and you were up at like 5:30 in the morning, and you said, I can't remember what exactly it was. You were going for a mako shark. You're going to pick up a mako shark and a swordfish bill or something like that, was it?
Yeah, that's it exactly. I went up to a place called Newcastle, which is about 3 hours north of Sydney. Commercial fisherman again, and I ended up buying, I ended up sort of getting from them, 12 swordfish bills, and then they gave me a whole mako, and mako, a couple of mako heads, etc. So it's trying to sort of get these, and obviously having contacts pretty much worldwide, really. And so rather than waste any of these specimens, I mean, obviously I can't get all of them, but obviously these things are caught and they're sold at market. Etc. In Australia, we have a policy where, for example, the whole shark has to come back on the boat. So, it avoids the whole process of actually finning these animals and throwing them back into the water and just keep the fins. So the whole animal has to come back on the actual on the boat itself. And a lot of these trawlers have got cameras, which as soon as the long lines go in, cameras go on and they go back to the government department, the fisheries, to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So it's very well organized and it's very well controlled, according to quotas, etc. So yes,
you're
it's
seeing
zipping
that
around the place.
You're seeing that as well, aren't you? With all of the work that you do and the work that other people do for the shark conservation as well, and you're really seeing a growth now. If you look at all the data in the shark populations, aren't you? Even though they declined massively, they're now starting. And that was to do mostly with the finning of shark, wasn't it? Because some of these they were just taking the fins and that was it, and they were going through hundreds and thousands, which is just devastating. And now you're really seeing, and it's people like yourself who are bringing making it the conservation for the sharks basically, and bringing it into the public view, which is great. And now you're starting to see that climb again, aren't you? Which is amazing.
Yeah, that's right. And also now a lot of the countries which who before were basically hunting sharks for commercial purposes, for obviously marketing, etc., have now kind of turned the corner and they've either using sharks for tourism, so they know that they're going to still bring in tourist dollars. For example, whale sharks in the Philippines, etc., where people can actually go and dive with them, etc. Another place that actually set up whole marine parks, whereby the whole area there is what they call a green zone, and so of course there's no commercial fishing, there's no recreational fishing, etc. So it gives a chance for these areas to sort of really build up quite a lot. And I think also museums. I mean, I just got contacted yesterday by a museum in Germany who wants some skulls for their own natural history section. So there's a lot more appreciation and understanding of what these animals really are about. But again, people have got this perception which goes back to the time of Jaws, where it's still like the big dorsal fin and the teeth, and that's all they know about the sharks, and the fact that they don't want to go into the water because they're going to get attacked, which is of course not true. But the public perception now is going more towards the educational part and understanding more about the role that these animals play, which is vital anyway. I mean, the moment you take sharks out of the ocean dies. As simple as that.
It's simple. So have you ever been in a cage or anything like that, or swam with sharks, Simon? Have you been there?
Look, I was actually very lucky. I managed to go. I managed to go down to South Australia with a good friend of mine, Andrew Fox and Rodney Fox, who in the 1963, I think it was 64, Rodney was actually one of the first survivors of a white shark attack. And he's very well documented around the world. There's a famous photograph of him standing like this, and I think they put 434 stitches in him because the shark grabbed him around the torso and nearly killed him. So I went diving with his family in South Australia, and the sharks were incredible. And I also was very, very lucky that I managed to go with a very, very good friend of mine, a research scientist called Ralph Collier, who runs one of the shark attack programs, let's say, in the US, and he does a lot of research on that. And we went to Guadalupe in Mexico, luckily before it got shut down and you can't go diving there anymore. And to view these white sharks in their element is just, it's indescribable. The beauty of these animals in the water, and the fact is that they are so big that you think that you're going to see them coming and you don't. You turn around and they've disappeared, and before you know it, in the peripheral vision, they're right next to your cage. And you just wonder, how did they manage? How does a 17, 18 foot animal manage to sneak up on you? It's incredible.
It's absolutely incredible. They're so camouflaged and they're so well equipped and so well evolved for what they do, and it just truly is amazing. They're just an absolutely amazing animal, aren't they? It's just great.
I know, they're stunning.
So Simon, the pieces that you've done, this bull shark, this is a new piece that you've done as well, isn't it? Have you done one of them before?
It is a new piece, and what's happening with bull sharks and about another 52 species of what they call Carcharinus, which is the Latin name for what they call the whaler sharks. In November this year, 52 species of these whalers are going to be put on the CITES list. So CITES, basically what it is a methodology whereby you need to have permits to export them overseas.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that, you can't export them overseas. So it's trying to cut down on the black market, let's say, of having to sell these pieces. So bull sharks now will be on the list itself, and there's a lot of people now who are sort of trying to scramble to get a lot of these pieces before you start needing the paperwork for it. But as far as what people want skull-wise, the hammerhead is still the one that people want, because obviously what they call the cephalofoil, which is obviously the hammer, is a piece that people just love watching, sort of love seeing and having it on display. So bull sharks and hammerheads and makos as well, and tiger sharks. So these are all different species of sharks that I work with. And probably the most popular is probably the mako shark, because of obviously its shape, but also the bull shark because of just the fact that this thing is just chunky. And then of course the hammerhead. But the hammerhead, again, you need papers for it.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested in purchasing or getting in touch with you, where do they find you, Simon?
My company's called Elasmomorph. And you just have to type in probably shark skulls or shark jaws, and I'll probably come up. It is a process, obviously involved as far as paperwork is concerned. You have to go through all the legal hoops that you have to sort of jump through as far as getting all this. But in the end, you have something which I think in about maybe 10 or less years, pretty much all sharks will be pretty much protected. So having something like this, a piece like this, is something that is quite historical. We've seen it obviously with museum pieces, there were, elephants and rhinos and what have you that were shot, back in the 1920s and 30s. Now, basically, that's pretty much it. So, they are pieces that are historical. So I think the sharks will go down the same path. But yeah, so Elasmomorph is everything on there, and everything is legal, and everything has got paperwork. So you have to be prepared to both wait and have to go through all the paperwork.
Yeah, and also it's going to cost you some money as well, because these pieces, I mean, if you would like a great white shark jaw, I mean, it's the best, most statement piece you would probably have in your collection, and you could really work around it. But obviously it's going to cost you the money, isn't it? Simple as that.
Well, it is. I mean, I'm just actually selling... I'm selling a jaw on behalf of a client in Holland, which I bought for him and I restored, cleaned it all up, etc. It's from a 5.5 meter white shark, so it's actually quite a large one. and it's got a $55,000 price tag on it. But
Yeah,
having
of
said
course.
that, it's got the paperwork, and it's one of those things whereby once you have it, that's pretty much it. You know, you've got
Yeah.
you've got your showpiece, you've got your centerpiece, and that's the reality of it. You know.
And there isn't many people out there. Is there anybody else out there that you know who's doing this with sharks, Simon? There isn't really, is there?
Look, there are. Yeah, well, they're very few and far between to the
Yeah.
level to which I do it. So a lot of people,
Mm.
I've got some very, very good friends of mine who are brilliant at what they do in Taiwan, in Japan, and America as well. But it's a very, very small pocket of people who specialize in this particular area.
Yeah, and
A
they
lot of
probably
people just
don't.
kind of try sharks and go, nah, too hard.
Yeah, and they're probably it's probably quite also you're in the ideal place for big sharks and stuff like that as well, aren't you? So you're actually exactly they're everywhere
Exactly.
basically. So yeah, no, and so
That's pretty much it.
if anybody's looking into sort of cleaning fish, sharks, stuff like that, what would you suggest for them to do as a novice beginner? What would you what any tips that you could give them?
Look, I think it's one of those things whereby you need to be very diligent in what you do, and you need to record everything. Every time I get a piece measured, photographed ad nauseum, you get as many measurements as you can, write everything down. A lot of the groups, for example, on Facebook are very, very good because they tend to deal with skeletonizing, or they tend to deal with other, particularly type of fish, or with just taxidermy in general. That's probably a good idea to sort of join these sorts of groups because everyone is very, very open and they want to sort of obviously help the newbies. I tend to rely a lot on, if I have to sort of, learning new techniques, I go to the scientific papers, for example. So I think there's a company called Academia which do actual scientific papers. You can Google this sort of stuff, and if you Google how to clean shark jaws, you'll get about 90 hits of people telling you to bury them or put them on an ant's nest, and they'll be right, they'll come out brilliant, which of course is not true at all. So you can't rely on Google.
Sounds like some sort of sounds like some sort of witchcraft or something. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a bit
No,
like the scene in Jaws where Quint is boiling the jaws, in Jaws the movie. And of course, if you did that, all the teeth would fall out, and it'd end up looking like the gummy white shark. So
yeah.
I think that by joining such groups, you can learn a lot from other people, and that's probably the best way of doing it. And you need to have a lot of patience, and a lot of time on your hands.
So that's great because I'm sure there's loads of people who are going to be watching this who would love to have a go. I mean, there's a lot of people who or listening in as well who love to try and prepare their own specimens, even if it's something just small. They can start off small and then work their way up, can't they? So,
Of
Simon,
course.
what would be your dream specimen to work on? Obviously you've got the great white shark, haven't you, in the bag? That's always going to be a dream for someone. But is there anything else out there? Is there a rare shark or something else that you would love to try and work on?
Yeah, look, I think probably. I mean, I think what's amazing would be like a whale shark skull, which of course whale sharks are huge, and again, they're protected. Some of the big rays as well, which when they're actually skeletonized, they're just like the most amazingly beautiful animals. I was actually quite lucky. I've worked on megamouth jaws, which were caught prior to them being protected. Now they're totally protected in Taiwan. This was like probably 8 or 9 years ago that I started. So the megamouth jaws are, as the word says, it's pretty big, but they are very difficult to work on because it's like gel. They're very, very soft bodied animals, sharks. So I was actually lucky to work with those. But also some of the deep water sharks, some of the deep water sharks that are found way 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 meters down, which are only tiny, but just the bioluminescence of them and the eyes, etc., it's phenomenal. And there's so many more sharks which I'm sure are still down there in the ocean that we don't know about. And every now and then they pull something up and they go, "Oh look, it's a new species of shark." Oh, I thought we'd sort of found all of them, but it's not the case.
Yeah, well, we're going deep. We're diving deeper as well now, aren't we? And I mean, the ocean's just so vast, isn't it? People just don't realise. I mean, what's down there? That's it. And it's amazing, isn't it? Like you're seeing some of these animals as well that you never saw before. Like the one that stands out is the oarfish for me.
Yes.
I mean, people had never seen that, and now they've actually got footage of it, haven't they? You know, they thought this was a sea monster type thing, didn't they?
Yeah,
Basically,
that's
in the
right.
past,
Well, look at the
and a lot of
coelacanth.
yeah, yeah, exactly. As well, they found them, and they were meant to be fossilized, weren't they? Like a fossilized fish
That's
type thing. Yeah, yeah, it's incredible. And also, they were all people knew about these animals as well, didn't they? But they just thought they were monsters, didn't they? Basically, back in the day.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
you
right.
see
The
these
oarfish, especially, looks like
yeah. You
the
see these
oarfish looks
pictures.
like a sea serpent. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely it does. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does. It looks like a giant sort of seahorse type thing, doesn't it? Which is very, very strange. You know, you just don't expect that. Okay, Simon. Well, you know, it's absolutely amazing to talk to you because what you do, I've always been a fan. I always love to see what sort of you're doing. What's next coming up for you? What have you got on the plans? Anything good?
I've got a big project that I've got at the moment is I'm going to have to skeletonize for one of the fisheries departments a 4.5 meter white shark. So the whole skeleton of this white shark, which will be rather interesting. I'm also doing a 1.8 meter tiger shark for a veterinarian in Papua New Guinea. And I'm also doing 2 or 3 big bluefin tuna heads, which at the moment are in solution, and they are essentially degreasing because these animals have got so much grease in them that is just incredible. And so it takes months for the grease and oil to come out of the skulls. So that's what I'm sort of working on at the moment. But the next big one will be this 4.5 meter white shark, which it has to be obviously cut into sections to sort of be worked on because obviously this thing is it's like a kind of a mini swimming pool to sort of put the whole thing in there. But so that'll be the next one, which will be quite amazing.
Wow. So what is talking about that? So is that the biggest? What would be the biggest shark that you worked on? It's obviously goes by the jaws, doesn't it? What would the length
It
be?
does. I was actually quite lucky to work on a restoration of a shark, which by obviously measuring the size of the jaw and the measuring of the teeth itself, I reckon it would have been about 6 meters long, so 20-foot long white shark that was caught back in the 1970s. That was brought to me to be restored, and I named it Bondi because the guy found it when he ended up buying a penthouse suite in Bondi. And so I called it Bondi. It was just in the garage somewhere, languishing and gathering dust and whatever. So he brought it to me to be restored, and this thing was just monstrous. So that was probably the biggest actually I've worked on. So this 4.5 meter white shark is kind of a bit, yeah, it's a little one compared to the. But however, seeing the whole skeleton of it, yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, that's another challenge, isn't it? I suppose to do the whole skeleton and then piece it all back together, which is going to be great fun for you. So let's go back to Bondi. Yeah. So do you ever know that these jaws were man eaters, or were they ever linked with attacks and things like that? Sometimes were they sort of like people went out and hunted them in the day? Did they? If they killed someone, would that be a thing?
It used to be quite a bit. Now, when there are, I mean, we recently had a shark attack here in north of Sydney, sort of up the north coast of Sydney, where a surfer who probably was on the news anyhow, he ended up losing a leg. He was bitten by a I think they said it was about a 4.3 meter white shark when he was sitting on his board surfing. And there's a photograph of him and then another guy next to him, and you could see the swirl next to this guy, but the shark didn't go for this guy, it went for the other guy. Took his leg off and injured the other leg that he had, and he was lucky actually that there was an off-duty paramedic doctor on the beach who managed to tourniquet, and so he's actually okay. So in a case like that, they try to sort of, well, they don't really hunt the shark as such to kill it. They try and move it out of the area if possible. Back in the 70s, I worked on a jaw that I was told with certainty that it actually was a shark that was involved in the first attack on an abalone diver in South Australia. A guy called Terry Manuel got bitten by the shark and died. And so, they organized the posse to go out and hunt this shark, and they caught it. And they kind of, they knew it was the shark, put it that way. So I cleaned the jaws for that one. And there's something strange about that sort of stuff. I guess it's the same thing when you're dealing with antiques and, you either have skulls that have got a history behind them. It's kind of strange to sort of hold them and to deal with them. So
it's funny, but then also it is very strange, isn't it? But then also the shark is in their natural environment. We've went into that, and these things happen very, very rarely, but they seem to be the things that also ignite the imagination as well, and they're the things that get into the news and stuff,
I think the mentality in Australia, and I think to a certain degree in America as well, is that the people go surfing, people go diving, people go spearfishing, people go swimming, and they are basically totally resigned to the fact that if something happens to them, they don't want anything to happen to the shark. And that is something that it is a common denominator. It's a common factor that happens every single time there's a shark attack in Australia, whereby the family, the friends, relatives, and the person themselves, if they're alive, basically go, we don't want to have the shark killed, because that's what they do. That's their natural environment.
And that's what education has done, because 50 years ago, people would probably go out and hunt that shark, and that is what has happened, hasn't it? The mindset has changed now, which is absolutely amazing, for sharks. And
it is, and
everybody.
it's brilliant that that's the case. It's brilliant that is the case, because it needed to have that change. Otherwise, we were going down a bit of a slippery slope whereby every single shark was killed just for sport, and it doesn't work that way. That's how there's an imbalance in the oceans doing it that way. So I think it's a really positive step that's actually been happening now with people realizing what the important role of these animals is.
Brilliant. Well, Simon, are you back to work now? Are you finished for the day? You've probably been up for like 12 hours or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so I've put everything away, and now I've got tomorrow morning I'll start all over again and get things organized. And so it's a constant working pattern that you have to sort of do. You're doing one thing and then you go on to the other one. Well, this one dries, you go on to that one, and while that one is soaking, then you go on to that one. It's constant. So I've actually been quite busy, which is good. It's very, very good, in fact.
Well, we're just about out of time, Simon, but it's been great to have you on. Thank you so much for being patient. We've had a few tech issues in the past, all the way out in Australia, but I think we've got it all sorted now. And I'm sure everybody will really take this well. And so if you want to go and follow Simon, go and check him out. Just type it in. Go and check him out on Instagram. You can see all of some amazing shark skulls and jaws and all sorts of different things that he does on there, which is absolutely great. And then also just type him out, just like he says, you'll find him easily if you type in shark jaws, basically.
Yes, I'll be there.
Right. So thanks, Simon. And we'll speak soon, no doubt. I would love to have you back on at some point.
Pleasure.
In the future when you do this massive great white shark skeleton, that would be amazing, mate. So brilliant.
Oh, definitely. I'll make sure I'll let you know. We'll do a program on that one by itself. You probably need a one-angle camera for it.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Simon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having me.